jeden, český a anglický. 3, 4.
Blízko je ten krásný den, haleluja.
Když se Bůh na zem vrátí, přijde si pro svaté jen, nás všechny do nebes uchvátí. Těším se na tento čas, až promění nás jen pouhým mrknutím. Zvedá svůj hlas, neboť spása přišla s ním. One day the trumpet shall sound, hallelujah. One day the Lord shall appear. He will descend in a shout, hey, and we will jump in the air. Till then be watching and pray, for we'll be changing the twinkling of an eye. Lift up your heads, your redemption draweth nigh. Prezentaci a začneme trošku těma písničkama. So I welcome you on this presentation today, and we start with few choruses, as you noticed. So, pevná skála má 3, 4. Jo.
Děti Boží, národ svatý, jak nás nazval Hospodin, proto pojďme zvěstovat. bold. You've got to be bold. You can't be afraid. You can't be afraid. When this world's old. When this world's old. So let's be bold.
Děkuji Kubě. Zahajeme dnešní večer shromáždění modlitbou. Požádáme Adela, aby otevřel shromáždění. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Děkujeme ti, Otče náš, za to, že můžeme tady být, že máme tento večer, že máme tento čas, kdy můžeme poslouchat tvoje slovo, že můžeme dozvědět víc o tobě, Otče náš. A modlíme se k tobě, prosím, aby požehnal celý večer, aby požehnal řečníka, aby požehnal řeč jeho úst, Otče náš, abychom z toho rostli a byli nadšení, Otče náš. Chválíme tvému jménu. Hallelujah.
Amen. Tak vás tu vítám na dnešní prezentaci, která bude o Velikonocích.
Easter. What does that mean? So this is the truth about Easter. So I'm doing this deliberately a week before Easter because that makes it relevant right now. Vůbec ho neslyším. Do ucha. So what came first? The chicken or the egg? So the Bible or the egg? Pořád ho neslyším, jenom šum. On jde do beden? To je lepší. So if you look at this time of the Easter, we have to divide it into two things. So it's two completely different, independent, sort of like to say, celebrations at this time. So we have the Easter celebrations and we have the Passover. They're quite independent things. The Passover is according to the Bible, and there's no Easter in the Bible. So as you can see up there, the Easter is a celebration of spring. So why are they put together, these two things? Well, because they happened at roughly the same time of the year. So what I'd like to show you is the first thing which happened here were the pagan traditions, and then later this Passover was instigated 1486 BC, when the Israelites were led out of Egypt. So they were over 400 years in Egypt. They became a slave nation, and they were forced to work very hard for the Egyptians. And God heard their cry and took them out of Egypt. So shortly before, just the day before they were taken out, he sent the 10th plague, where all of the firstborn were killed, except for those who had celebrated this Passover. So God through Moses told the Israelites to kill a year-old lamb, take its blood and put it on the posts of the door. And that was a sign for the Lord that these doors, which have been covered in the blood, should not be touched by death, because it's the people of God. So all of the Egyptians said, like, leave our land that night, and they left. And since then, the Passover has been celebrated. So here we have some pagan traditions and customs. This is my neighbor. Yeah, he's got this tree, and every spring he's got artificial eggs growing on it. I don't know how it works, but you can see it's a whole load of rubbish, really, for a tree to have eggs growing on it. Here we have ducks. Here it looks like the ducks are laying coloured eggs. So it's all nonsense, really. You can feed your hen as much chocolate as you want. It's not going to lay chocolate eggs. And you know, the ducks are not going to lay those coloured eggs either. So the rabbit or the hare, that made me laugh a bit. We'll get to that. The Easter bunny. So some coloured eggs, red colour. We know that eggs are a symbol of fertility. And now I'm looking for the word. It's red, which is a symbol of the womb. So that's the way. Yeah, I didn't make it up. But you can see he's a bit embarrassed by it. This is not the tree of my neighbour, but it is pretty impressive. I love to have a tree like that full of eggs. So how did the Easter Bunny come about? This is how the Easter Bunny came about. So this I got this picture in my email this week. So this is just for fun. So this goddess, Ostara, was her job was to make sure that Easter would arrive, warmth, newborn. So you can see different languages there: Easter in English, Dutch, no, German, Ostern, and so her name is Ostara. So you can see the connection there in the words. So we see that Easter itself is very closely connected, not to the Bible, but to the this goddess and the pagan traditions, which was to do with the coming of spring. So the point was, at one point she was delayed, and already the birds had started flying, and there was a bird there which basically was like frozen. And she felt so sorry for him because she couldn't save him as a bird because his wings were so frozen, and so he lost them. But to sort of like to make him feel not that bad about it, she turned him into a rabbit, and she gave him the ability to once a year lay eggs in the colours of the rainbow. To remind him that he came from a bird. So that's how the bird came, and the bunny and the eggs. That sort of connection comes about. The bunny which brings eggs once a year. So painted eggs are a symbol of fertility. Here we have a chick, which is a symbol of spring. So here we have Pesach, or the Passover itself. So 1485, I think it was, he said, when the Israelites left Egypt. So this is the day before the Egyptians told them, now you've got to leave. It was just before that last plague, and you can see the guy here painting his door with blood, And so they took the lamb and they ate it with its innards together as well. They were to be dressed and ready to leave with the shoes on and the staff in their hand and to eat it quickly.
To byl hod beránka.
That was the Passover lamb.
A teďko
And now we'd like to see the connection between the Passover meal, or the celebration, and the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, because people connect Easter with Jesus Christ and his crucifixion.
trošku čtení teďka.
So now we've got a little bit of reading to do. This is Exodus 12. Hang on. Exodus 12, verse... Počkej, Tomáši, nevidím ten verš, to je modrý, to je nepřijte...
Druhá Mojžíšova 12
And I'm going to read verse 6, I suppose.
až 14.
Okay, I've got it here. And you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly, the name of that month was Nisan,
Budete mít ten hod beránka.
which is the month where they had the Passover. And the whole assembly and the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. That's the lamb. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and the upper post of the houses wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs, and they shall eat it. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire his head, his legs, and his purtenance thereof. And ye shall leave nothing of it to remain until the morning, and that which remaineth until the morning ye shall burn with fire. And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, your staff in your hand, and ye eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. And the blood shall be for you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. And this shall be unto you for a memorial, and shall keep it for a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. So from that day, forever, until the return of Jesus Christ, their order was to celebrate this Passover as a very important day for the Israelites. So now, just reading a little bit further on in the same chapter, I'm going to look at verse 31. And he called for Moses. So we have the 14th of Nisan, 1486 BC. And he called for Moses and Aaron, that's the Pharaoh, by night, and said, Rise up and get ye forth from among my people, both ye and your children of Israel, and go and serve the Lord as ye have said. Take also your flocks and your herds, as ye have said, and be gone, and bless me also. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, We be all dead men. So we know that the 10th plague came at about midnight, and very shortly after they said, right, you've got to go, just get out of here. So you see, the 14th was the day of the Passover feast, and the 15th of Nisan, they actually started to leave the land of Egypt.
14 Nisan od beránka, 14 Nisan ukřižování Ježíše Krista. Tady se vám jestli neblbnul ten, co říkal.
So there's... I didn't want to have that picture on the left. It's not supposed to be the Last Supper. It's supposed to be the Passover, because we know the Last Supper was a day earlier. So the 14th of Nisan was the Passover feast, and on the same day was the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. So here we see the 18th of Nisan. So it's all a bit mixed up, really. No, it's not. And then on the 18th of Nisan, we see the empty tomb. So on the first day, which we would call Sunday, which is after the Sabbath, when it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the grave and saw that the stone was rolled away, and she ran to Simon Peter and to the other apostles or disciples, to the other disciple which Jesus loved, and told him they took the Lord from the grave. I don't know where they've put him, because they didn't know that he was going to rise from the dead. So when they came there on the 18th, Jesus was already gone. They came there right early in the morning and he was gone already. So now let's dig into a little bit of history here. So we go to Exodus 12, 1 and 3. And the Lord said, spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months, shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying in the 10th day of this month. So we see that this month was very important for them. First month of our year is January. The first month for them was Nisan. Even there's some companies which start the sort of like financial year not in the 1st of January or wherever it is, but they started in when do we start? So we start in October. So they on the 1st of October they start their financial year. So maybe there's some connection with that. But that's not something we're going to speculate about tonight. So Nisan was the first month of the year. It'll be the first month of the year for you. Verse 3, speak unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month, they shall take unto them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. Now we're jumping over a little bit. So it's to say that on that day they'll have a meeting, and on the 7th day they'll have a meeting, which turns out to be the 16th. I think that's verse 16. Yes, there it is. And in the first day, in verse 16, there shall be an holy convocation or meeting, and the 7th day shall be an holy convocation to you, and no manner of work shall be done in them, save that every man must eat, that only may be done of you. It's the only thing they could do, and that's the 7th day. That was the 16th of Nisan. So that was a very, very holy time for the Hebrews. So verse 14 of that chapter 12. And this day shall be unto you, that talking about the 14th of Nisan, shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it for a feast to the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall put away your leaven out of your house. So that's from the 14th of Nisan to the 21st of Nisan, that would be. To put leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day shall be cut off from Israel. And now I'm just jumping to John 18. Tomáši, dej mi chvíli tonight. So just going to jump over to John 18, verse 28. Okay, right. So, and then they led Jesus from Caiaphas unto the hall of judgment, and it was early in the morning. And they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. So that particular translation of the Bible which he has got the word Easter in, because it's all sort of become mixed up throughout the years. So the Passover, which is what we have in English, is correct because it's been translated from Pesach. So how do we know that this day when Jesus was being judged was the 14th of Nisan? Because they didn't want to go into that house to judge him for the reason that they wouldn't be defiled, so that they could eat the Passover that day. And in verse 39 of the same chapter, Pontius Pilate is saying, "But ye have a custom that I should release unto you one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews?" So that's what the question he was asking on the Passover. So he was being judged on the Passover, which would be the 14th of Nisan, the same day he was crucified. We know that. So there we can identify that he was crucified, and he died at approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 14th of Nisan, and buried at some point that evening or that night. So we see the 14th of Nisan was the Passover, and it was on the same day was the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Okay, now looking at John 19, I'm going to start reading in verse 28. After this, Jesus, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, saith, I thirst. And there was set a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled a sponge with vinegar, and they put it upon hyssop, and put it to his mouth. And when Jesus therefore had received the vinegar, he said, It is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. The Jews therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain on the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was an high day, besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and they may be taken away. Then came the soldiers and brake the legs of the first and the other which was crucified with him. But when because there was other two, one by his left, one by his right, who were thieves, when they came to Jesus and saw that he was dead already, they brake not his legs. So I just want to say that they broke the legs of the other two, but not of Jesus. Everybody's very surprised to see that he was that already was dead. Jesus Christ was already dead. They broke the legs of those other two guys to make sure that they would die quicker, because they had to take them off the crosses. Because they didn't want, on this big day, which was the 17th of Nisan, they didn't want anybody hanging on a cross that day. So we know that they weren't allowed, or when they ate that, when they ate the lamb of the Passover, they didn't break any of its bones, in the same way that Jesus didn't have his bones broken, because Jesus is the sacrificial lamb for us. So we see a similarity there, and therefore they didn't break Jesus's bones, as the scripture says, and it makes this connection between that sacrificial lamb of the Passover and Jesus Christ. And now reading in verse 41, now in that place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new sepulchre where never man yet laid. And there they laid Jesus, therefore, because the Jews' preparation day for the sepulchre was nigh at hand. So now I'm going to look in Luke 24. So this is already after Jesus had risen. Then he opened their understanding that they might understand the scriptures. And he said unto them, Thus it is written, and thus it behoved Christ to suffer and rise from the dead the third day. So he told them several times that he will suffer and die and be raised again on the third day. And when he was risen from the dead, he reminded them. So we know that he was crucified on the 14th. So then there was 3 days and 3 nights was the 15th, the 16th and the 17th. Those would be those 3 days. So just jumping over to Mark 16. And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome had bought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. And very early in the morning, the first day of the week, which for them would of course be a Sunday, so it must be the 18th morning, but first they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. And they said among themselves, who shall roll away the stone from the door of the sepulchre? Because they looked and saw that the stone was rolled away, for it was very great. And they entered into the sepulchre, and they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white garment, and they were affrighted. And he said unto them, be not frightened, ye seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. He is risen, he is not here. Behold the place where they laid him. But go your way, tell his disciples and Peter that he goeth before you into Galilee. There ye shall see him, as he said unto you. So when they came on the 18th, which we know has to be a Sunday, with him being crucified and then buried on the 14th in the evening, being in the grave 15th, 16th, 17th, and when they arrived on the 18th, which was Sunday, we know he was gone.
Velikonoce a ukřižování, vzkříšení Ježíše Krista. Znovu přečteme Lukáš 24, 45 až 47.
So Luke 24, verse 45 says, he opened their understanding that they might understand the scriptures, that this is written that behoved Christ to suffer and rise from the dead the third day. So there's this thing which they call Green Friday. What do we call that in English? I can't remember. Black Friday? So he's made it up with they call it Green Friday. So there's another Green Friday. It's probably got something to do with something completely different, probably. So that's when they say that Jesus Christ was crucified. But he was then supposed to be. Well, we know that he was raised from the dead on Sunday. It's like it's like in Russia, where one day you plant and the next day you harvest. Which is a joke. Yeah, if you don't get it, then don't worry. So there's lots of churches out there which can't even count and they'll lie to you about it. And people believe it. Don't think that how did it actually happen? To není Martin z Holandska? From Holland? That's not Martin from Holland, sorry. I was translating for you into Czech. So what do I want to praise, to worship? The Bible or Easter? That's it. So if you got any questions, you can go ahead and ask, and I'll try and answer them. If not, then it's a time for entertainment.